Thanks for being here. My name is Mile Marker, also known as Madeline. This podcast aims to discover what it means to live authentically. I work to uncover tools to help me be most present in my life. Each episode, we will discuss themes like how to listen to your body, understanding ways to be true to yourself, and learning what deep fulfillment looks like. The episodes will also relate to ideas inspired by my 2024 hike across the state of Arizona. Let's do this.
Welcome to episode 12 of Musings with Mile Marker. On the 12th day of my hike across the state of Arizona, I got to wake up in a hotel, which was a rare but very appreciated occurrence. I'm going to turn to the audio right now because there's a lot that I want to talk about and I don't really have a preamble. So let's listen.
Hello. Today is Thursday, March 21st. Day 12. We hiked 15 or so miles. We woke up at the hotel and ate breakfast at the hotel. I had this quinoa bowl that was pretty good. Nick had his hash browns and an omelet. Then we walked to Sprouts, went shopping. Did a great Sprouts haul, got everything we needed. Then we got a Uber from there, from Cameroon, who was nice. He was formerly in the military for the U.S., but he has a strained spine. So he was discharged, it seemed like. And he used to hike, but his back has been bothering him, so he's going to have to get that fixed by the VA. Right when we got to the parking lot, after he dropped us off, we were situating our packs and getting ready, and Mrs. Joy showed up. So that was exciting. So we chatted with her for a minute, got situated, and then we started our trail time officially at like 10 a.m. Went past Gordon Hirabayashi, went to this, I think it was called like Superior Water area, and we just got into a little bit of shade and ate our lo mein from last night for snack, which was delicious. My body felt good. I was in good spirits. Didn't pee a lot, didn't drink a ton during the day, but I wasn't feeling it, I guess. Made it to Hutch's pool, which was stunning. We saw a couple day hikers, elderly men day hikers, between Gordon Hirabayashi and Hutch's pool. When we got to the pool, there was a girl there. It was her day off from the fire service, or forest service, and she had worked on the connector trail around Patagonia. Hutch's pool was stunning. We both dumped in. If it was like a couple degrees hotter, it would have been literally perfect. We hung around on the sand, had some snacks, climbed a couple rocks around, enjoyed the sun. But by that time, it was like 3 o'clock. We still had a few more miles, so made it to Cathedral Rock, filled up some water, and then made it to Romero Pass while the sun was setting. And honestly, hiking during like the 5 and 6 o'clock hour was actually really nice. It was nice because we haven't done it much, so having some variety was good. You know, hiking from 10 to 6:45 instead of from like 8 until 4:30 was a good variety. The steepness wasn't horrible. My feet are sore. My feet were fairly sore during that session, but my spirits were high and my energy was really good, especially from Cathedral Rock up to Romero Pass. It started getting really steep, but I was trucking. So really, really successful day. We just had couscous and a Pop-Tart, and we got our snacks ready for tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to get up and try to hit the trail by 6 so that we can get to Mount Lemmon. Jackie is in Kearney. Our box has arrived in Kearney at Q's house, so that's great. And honestly, everything's going great. Nick, how are you feeling?
Good.
Nick's feeling good. Hungry. Oh, something else I wanted to say. I finished the rest of my podcast on climbing. And the most important thing they said was set intention. Intention, intention, intention. If you're doing hover hands and all of the moves on a 8 move problem are fine except for one, don't do that route a bunch of times. Try that one move with that hover hands method as many times as it takes for you to figure out why is it hard? How can I overcome this? Like being really, really intentional and strategic on skills and what you want to improve and what you want to focus on and where you're getting tripped up is the name of the game. So if I want to focus on putting feet work intentionally and understanding why are putting intentional feet difficult or what moves make it difficult, really, really analyzing where the problems come from, and then overcoming those problems is the name of the game. So I enjoy the podcast. They also are coaches. I still plan on going back to Dillon, but who knows? Maybe I'll sign up with these guys. Then the last thing I wanted to say was, something I mentioned that I've talked about with Nick during our hike, but I wanted to emphasize here is this concept of strength at end range. Functional range conditioning, what I've been doing with Andres, is all about moving your joints into end range capacity and then trying to build active strength instead of passive range. And even with hiking, the idea of strength at end range is like as you're getting tired, as you're reaching your limit, be strong when the going gets tough. So I like that mentality, just in general. So that's all for today. Romero Pass is where we are, and life is good.
What you just heard was the audio clip from my hiking on the 12th day through the Arizona Trail. And there are a few points that I mentioned during the hike that I want to revisit today. One thing I want to revisit is eating the lo mein just after Gordon Hirabayashi trailhead. And having a lunch that was not a granola bar was so exciting. Anytime that there was a little bit of variety in food or variety in fuel or even variety in the pacing, like resting your feet and putting them in a body of water or sunbathing or just having some sort of shift beyond waking up, having oatmeal for breakfast, eating a granola bar for lunch, and then having ramen or something similar for dinner with consistent hiking in between, the novelty was not lost on me. So the lo mein leftovers from the dinner we'd had the previous night were so delicious, and I really savored them. The next point I want to make is a shout out to Hutch's Pool. If you are ever in the Tucson area and want to have a fun adventure, hike to Hutch's Pool. It is a natural body of water that we swam in and was cool, and the canyon is still a pretty hot canyon, I would say generally, so this pool is a true oasis. And I'm not sure what the closest trailhead would be to get there, but it's definitely a little ways away from a trailhead. You have to kind of give it a committed hike. But it was one of the greatest landmarks and swimming holes of the entire trip by far. So Hutch's Pool gets a shout out. I want to spend a moment discussing the podcast that I was listening to on rock climbing. First of all, I didn't spend a ton of time listening to podcasts because I didn't want to distract myself from the actual hiking. There was usually uneven terrain, and so I wanted to keep my wits about me and stay focused. So podcasts would sometimes feel like too much of a distraction where I couldn't give the attention that the hiking deserved. But in this instance, I listened to a podcast and it was about rock climbing technique and how to improve your rock climbing, which is one of the hobbies that I have when I'm not hiking long distance trails. And the setting an intention for your gym session is one I want to elaborate on, because right now I am working on gym climbing and climbing outside a lot right now because it's fall in Austin, which is really great weather, and it's the climbing season. So at the rock gym that I climb at, most of the holds are made out of plastic because it's an artificial rock gym, and that's just typical. However, there was a new set of holds, and these holds were made out of granite. So it was like going into an indoor climbing gym, except you're holding actual rock, which I loved because I do actual outside climbing. So training on granite translates to climbing limestone outside better than climbing on plastic. This route was pretty hard for me, the route made out of granite gym holds. And I had been trying it at the gym for a handful of days. And at first, I was trying to do the whole thing together, but then as I kept practicing, I realized that the final move was pretty challenging for me, so I needed to just practice that one over and over. And during a gym session, or even during any sort of fitness session, it's sometimes tempting, at least for me, to do a variety of activities, not to just focus on one type of exercise or one move over and over and over. That repetition and the monotony causes me to lose interest. So practicing this finishing move over and over was something that I knew was important if I was going to ever get to the top of this route, because you have to be able to do every single move, and it's much more worthwhile to focus on the one that you cannot do rather than doing the ones that you can do repeatedly. I appreciated that this training podcast that I was listening to on the trail was something that was really relevant today, because I was just working on this granite route and it was really exciting for me. Since I'm spending time on this podcast explaining hiker lingo and hiking idiosyncrasies, I might as well also add some climbing lingo and climbing idiosyncrasies as well. I mentioned the phrase hover hands, and I realize this is a climbing drill that many people would not be familiar with. If you think about rock climbing, or even climbing a ladder, let's say, you would just kind of move one hand up, one foot up, one hand up, one foot up. And the idea of hover hands is that right before you place your hand on the hold or on this ladder rung, you would pause. You would wait before you grab. And the intention of this drill is to slow down your movement so that you're able to maintain body tension through the motion rather than just using momentum to get you from one hold to the next. And this drill is really good because oftentimes it's very challenging to maintain body tension and move slower when a route is more difficult. This really exposes my weaknesses of if a route is something I can just kind of fling myself across, or if it's something that I can do slowly and smoothly and with intention. And this is actually a topic that's related to yoga, because a couple of days ago I did a vinyasa yoga flow class, and the instructor decided to do the poses and the transitions between poses in slow motion, and it was way harder. It made the seemingly typical poses needing a lot more mental thought. When you're moving really slowly, you're thinking about each little muscle rather than just going through point A to point B. You're drawing out the journey almost between A and B. And this is related a lot to this idea of doing motions or climbing or doing anything with intention is to slow down. And I think those are really related to a lot of the journey that I'm going on, is to do more with intention and subsequently to slow down in order to achieve that intention. The last point I want to address is the concept of strength at end range. And I'm so glad that I mentioned Andres and functional range conditioning. Andres is a functional range conditioning or mobility coach that I work with in Austin. And if you're ever in the Austin area, I wholeheartedly recommend his classes to anyone with any level of athletic desire or goals. His classes are just so foundational for the human body to operate optimally. And functional range conditioning is basically like strength training for your joints. And I could go on and on about why FRC is so excellent, but I am not an FRC expert. I am just a fangirl. But I think the concept of strength at end range is really a valuable one. So what does that even mean? The idea that from a physical perspective, when a joint or a muscle is in full extension, do you have the ability to use your muscle in that position? Or when you're stretched super thin, are you just gonna break and crumble? I think mentally, this is a really important phenomenon when you think that you're at the hardest moment or the strain level is really getting high. That's the time when people want to give up, and that's the time when people feel like they're at their breaking point. But the hardest moments that you're facing are the ones that require the most resilience. Even on this hike on day 11, I was feeling really dehydrated and sluggish. But in those strenuous moments are when you have to just dig deep and bring the fortitude that the moment requires. And on a topic that also relates to all of this tangentially is the idea of how to focus on your goals and setting intention with your goals. The hike was something that I was really only preparing for maybe 6 months before embarking. And even with my rock climbing goals, a lot of times I am just climbing to climb. I'm climbing to have fitness for a given day, or maybe to prepare for climbing season. But I don't often have lofty life goals or lofty fitness goals. I do have this general idea that I want to be able to execute 10 consecutive pull-ups, which I've never done before, but I believe that it is possible. The funny thing about this goal is that I'm not actually doing anything to improve my pull-up capacity. I'm just living my life and doing general fitness, but I still believe that I'll be able to achieve this goal despite not having very measurable tasks leading up to achieving this. But even with climbing, I want to climb well, but if I do want to excel, I should take my own advice, which is set intentional milestones to achieve bigger goals if I want to strive for more. And I think part of my personality, maybe this is a blessing and a curse, or maybe this is just part of who I am and I embrace it and accept it for part of my personality, but I've never been one to have a 5 or a 10-year plan and then do whatever it takes to achieve that. I sometimes will get into different grooves of things that I like, but I think having general ideas of what I want to accomplish, but not being so rigid about that is kind of freeing. While I do want to live life with intention and give myself milestones for achievement, I don't want to be too harsh on myself. I hope that this is coming off not too contradictory. But hey, being a little bit hypocritical is part of life. So if I'm someone who desires to have lots of far-fetched goals and not have any means to achieve them, so be it. I think one other thing about having lofty goals is that sometimes you still want to enjoy your life and live your life, but it's taking away from achieving something down the line. I would say I live my life with a good amount of balance, actually. When I was training for 50K races, my goal was to during my training blocks to be running 30 miles a week, every week, approximately. And if there was a day that I wanted to stay out late and skip my long run the next day, maybe I would do that once in a while, but I think that my balance between having fun and living a regular life and being diligent and training during this set amount of time is something that's just part of the ebbs and flows of all of life. So if I want to wrap this up and relate everything to hiking up to Romero Pass, I think it's that I embraced starting hiking at 10 a.m. so that I could see the golden hour. That was a nice, refreshing change of pace. And I understood the importance of having grit during the really steep section from Cathedral Rock to Romero Pass. But then there's still time to relax and enjoy at Hutch's pool. Life has ebbs and flows every day, and the goal is to not rush through these decisions and make decisions with intention, and that comes from slowing down and thinking about how do you live your life with your true best intentions and true best heart in mind.
That concludes this episode of Musings with Mile Marker. Thanks for listening. The intro and outro music are from a track called Wake Robin, composed and recorded by my late grandfather, Bob Ackery. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Polly Morwood. Production and editing of this podcast were done by me, your host, Mile Marker, aka Madeline Ackery. See you next time.